Hi everyone, it's Allison from Fathom 5 Tarot, and I'm here to do another installment in my What I Have Learned from Insert Tarot Deck here. And this is going to be the nerdiest video that I have ever done and I am ever likely to do. So if you stick with me through this one, I'll be super impressed. So the deck I'm going to be talking about today, I sort of hemmed and hawed about putting it on because I think it's out of print, but I don't think it's that hard to get your hands on one because it's kind of niche. Now, it's called the Shakespeare Oracle. This is a big, heavy box. It's faux wood. Oh God, I was worried that my dogs would think there was someone at the door just now. Let the bard predict your future. And although it is called the Shakespeare Oracle, I read that the reason it was called the Shakespeare Oracle is because there was already a Shakespeare Tarot on the market. Because this very much follows this tarot system, 78 cards, 56 minor arcana, 22 majors. You can tell the Rider-Waite smithiness of it all. So don't let the title throw you off. It comes again like in this big box. It's got a really good chunky guidebook. And if you want to learn about Shakespeare and the tarot, this is the place to come. Here are the cards. So let me make sure here. Do I have this right or do I have some in reverse? Yeah, I got them sort of upside down, I think. Yeah, so this is how, sorry, the deck's all mixed up. So it's not quite reversible. You can see that that looks like it's upside down for the S. This looks like it's right side up. Who cares? It's not that big a difference. And I like them. I like that they're understated. I like that it kind of looks like a wax seal on the back and then they're nice and sort of neutral. This cardstock is really thick. It is a mass-produced deck. It's produced by Fair Winds Press from Gloucester, Massachusetts. So, I mean, it is mass-produced, but it looks like a smaller publisher. I don't know if that publishing house is under the auspices of something like HarperCollins or Penguin. I don't have any idea. I don't know about Fair Winds. But they're good, sturdy cards, and they're big. So for a number of reasons, because it's called Oracle, it kind of looks like an oracle. There's just one of my old Rider-Waite Smiths. I am terrible at doing this card lineup, you guys. It's because I'm looking in reverse at the camera and I suck. So, I mean, everything about it does look at first glance like it's an oracle deck. It's not. It's a tarot deck. So that's what we got going on here. And I'm going to approach this slightly differently today. So let me show you what I mean. So the majors and the court cards are characters from either Shakespeare's time, a few of those, not too many, but mostly characters from Shakespearean plays. And so the idea is that those people are supposed to evoke those archetypes that Shakespeare wrote about. And then the other minors, the 1 to 10 minors, are pretty pippy, but then they have a quote from a play on them, and then the play is credited. So this one, that's why I've got my reading glasses, is happens to be the 9 of, oh, this is a great one actually, the 9 of Swords. Swords become quills in this deck, and it is where care lodges, sleep will never lie, from Romeo and Juliet. So I've got some other examples as well, but I'm not going to talk too much about the minors. I guess at this point, I guess I'll talk about the fact that I haven't too much used this as a traditional tarot deck in spreads, although the process of putting together this video made me think maybe I just should. I really do like it a lot. And this is from someone who I don't usually like what I would call property tarot decks, right? Where there's an existing property like The Nightmare Before Christmas or Alice in Wonderland. And then there's a tarot deck to go along with that. Now, I have been intrigued by some of the Alice in Wonderland decks because that's such a weird, cool story to begin with. And here we go. She's such an attention seeker. I can't with this cat. You can sit here if you're good. Oh, Are you going to be good? Okay. Like, for example, I did enjoy... Are you going to lie down? Right in front of me where I'm working? Okay, you lie down there. That's fine. We can coexist. Anyway, I liked Supernatural. I liked it a lot, and I was... Sorry, my light's all messed up. I was quite excited by the Supernatural Tarot deck that just came out in the last month. I just thought the art style looked really cool, and I was like, that show has a lot of characters. Like, it really got so stupid by the end. And I didn't even watch the end. I just like gave up because there were no stakes left anymore and all the episodes were retreads. But I did enjoy it when I happened upon it because the actors seemed to be having such a blast with it. And it's like such a good-natured show in the end. So, but then I watched a couple walkthroughs on YouTube and I was like, oh, no. Nope. Don't like that choice. Don't like that choice because I have my own ideas of how those archetypes are played out in the show. Blah, blah, blah. I don't have any theme decks. Do I have one other than this one? No, I don't think I do. I do have one deck. There is a walkthrough somewhere way back on my channel of the movie tarot, but that's like a still image from, 78 different films where they went through like hundreds of films to pick archetypes. That kind of works for me. I mostly got that one because the art is beautiful and it's this amazing Canadian artist, but I don't use it a ton. Anyway, sorry, I'm super rambly today, guys. Sorry. And I'm distracted by my cat. This one I really like. I really like it. I think they did a very good job. A lot of the things jive with what I have to say. But this is going to be a bit of a different video. I'm not going to go through too many minors. I'm just going to give you some examples of a couple and how you could maybe use them. I talk mostly about majors, a little bit about the courts. Because instead of what I learned from the tarot deck, it's how looking through the lens of these different Shakespearean characters has made me rethink some of the archetypes of the card, which I think is really interesting and really valid for me, because I love Shakespeare and I'm super involved in Shakespeare in my life. Sorry, the cat is destroying everything. You are a pain in my butt. Stay. So here we are. You're going to get kicked off. Get comfy. Okay, now stay. You can just see her ear right there. Okay, so here we go. Oh, frig. You are too much. We'll see how this goes. Again, I'm not choosing every major, but here are some really interesting ones. So the magician is Shakespeare himself, which I think is really great. That he is sort of a creator and he is making onstage magic for you to watch. And all right, I'm sorry. Out you go. What I love about Shakespeare is that he was like, obviously from his plays, we don't have the details of how he necessarily did everything. And because he was involved as an actor in so many of his own plays, there are lots of things that he just didn't bother to write down. So for example, in A Winter's Tale, where there is the stage direction, exit pursued by a bear, for one of the characters, like he doesn't go into detail about how that bear's gonna get there. Is it gonna be costume? Is it gonna be pantomime? Is the bear gonna be on stage or not? We just have to sort of imagine, and then any sort of person who's adapting that play for a modern audience has to decide how they're gonna deal with that stage direction. Or in Macbeth, the second time Macbeth meets the witches and asks for a prophecy about his future, they make things rise out of a cauldron, according to what Shakespeare says, including a severed head. How do you do such a thing? There's the world's best, maybe I'll link it. It's so good. If you're into Macbeth, my very favorite adaptation of Macbeth was co-directed by Teller, the magician from Penn and Teller, the duo. And they're able to, a severed head rises out of a cauldron and speaks to Macbeth. But, he was like, I'm doing it. Figure it out, guys. Let's create that stage magic. And I love, too, that he has a marionette with him in the marionette. And then that marionette has a marionette with him in it. I just think it's such a great thing. What is literature but creating another world for a person to get lost in? There's a real magic in art. And artists will often talk about the fact how they don't like to question their own process too much because they're worried that that might slip away. And I just, oh, it just gives me chills. So I love that. Now, this one I'm really interested in. I mean, on the one hand, obvious, of course, lovers, Romeo and Juliet. But they're not the greatest of the Shakespearean lovers. They end up dead. And if you can actually track the progression of Romeo and Juliet, and I think it's been a while since I've read that play, but it's like it takes place over about 4 days if you follow the hints that are given by Shakespeare. It's like they meet on a Thursday and they're dead by Sunday. And like everything about the play is very fast and very visceral. And they do have this passionate love. But to me, that play is a huge cautionary tale about the role of loving your life. And also, too, it's kind of a play about adults screwing things up for the next generation, right? None of it would have happened were their families not battling in this incredibly long feud, which never gets explained because nobody can remember what the feud was about. And also they approach love in a very immature way. Like Romeo is already in love when he meets Juliet. And then the second he sees her, he's in love with her. And I guess maybe it's an older, cynical view of the play, but there's like the passion and the vitality in that feeling that love can conquer all. But the play doesn't like play that out. So to me, it's a really interesting lover's card. It's a very both sides, a duality filled card of Romeo and Juliet. And we see them in their moment of love and of glory. But it's not a happy ending. So there's a lot of use in that in a lover's card. So I really like it. The Chariot is King Henry V. This is a really sort of positive leader character, someone who's triumphant, someone who moves forward and yet is merciful. And Henry V has the famous speech when he's commanding the troops at Agincourt, and once more into the breach, dear friends, once more. He's just a really positive forward motion character in the play. And for that reason, I think he's a great choice for the Chariot. Oh, I've got 2 in my hand there. Porsha is a character from, I was going to say Midsummer Night's Dream, but that's not at all correct. Merchant of Venice. And I love that she's got a little wise owl there with her. But Porsha is fascinating as a character. She's confined by all the things that women are confined by in Shakespearean times, including the fact that she's got to get married or she can't make anything of her life because women have to be married in Shakespeare's time in order to survive. But also she's really confined by the dictates of her father's will. And then later in the play, she is the only one who figures out how to get out of this terrible, terrible bond with Shylock. She disguises herself. She's the smartest person in the play, but also the wisest and most judicious. She's the one who knows what's right and wrong and can think her way through any problem. Which is what I think the justice card is about, right? She finds justice for a character that's, I don't want to give it away because it's such an ingenious way that she figures it out. I mean, spoilers for a 400-year-old play, but still, if you haven't seen Merchant of Venice and you think you might, it's so smart what she does to save a man who has been told that to pay off a debt, he has to give his debtor a pound of his own flesh, carve it from his body and give it to him. And no one can see a way out of this except for her. But the other thing, too, is that the bounds of her father's will are bonkers. And she is to be married to the man who chooses one of 3 casks, gold, silver, and then just a little dingy metal cask. And it's the metal cask that has to be chosen for her. So like someone who's not interested in material things, someone who wants to do something for the right reason. This is what Porsha represents. So I think she's a great justice card. Now the Hermit is another one that's a really interesting choice. So Caliban is from Shakespeare's last complete play, The Tempest. And Caliban is a hermit because that is the lot that has been carved out for him in his life. He's considered monstrous by the other characters. His name is an anagram of cannibal, basically, a beast. But he has emotions and eloquence and love. I guess he's sort of analogous to sort of a Frankenstein character in a way. But he finds his life within his solitude. And then by the end of the play, the people who have done him wrong acknowledge that they have done him wrong. And I think I've always thought of the Hermit card as being a real choice, right? But I think it's also a worthwhile just to look at, like, who do we ostracize, who gets pushed out, and why do they get pushed out, which I've never thought about until this particular reference to Caliban. The Strength card is Caterina and Petruchio from The Taming of the Shrew, which is very interesting. You have to do a little bit of work with The Taming of the Shrew, I think, to make it work for modern audiences. It's possible, certainly, to do. I've seen it done before where the play ends not with... there is a taming of the shrew, right? So Petruchio has to marry Catherine in order for her younger sister to marry. And she doesn't want to get married, and she fights, and they fight a lot, and she eventually does get married against her will. It can be quite a dark play, but it's very clear that she is as smart, if not smarter, than Petruchio. And I've seen it played before that they end as equals and not as him over her. So it's a bold choice for this deck. But what it comes to, if you have that reading that they end as equals, it's a real meeting of the minds. And you realize that Petruchio would not actually survive with anyone else. No one else would ever put up with him as a husband. But also in meeting his match, he can relax and let his guard down and embrace strength in another. These are characters who seek to dominate, and then they actually receive strength at the end from each other. Again, with that reading. So it's an interesting strength card. Not my favorite necessarily, but it depends on your reading of the play. But it did make me stop and think, which is what puts it onto this list. There could be no more perfect hanged man than Hamlet. Hamlet is notoriously... Well, that's not fair to Hamlet. He gets classified as indecisive. But he has this terrible choice. He's visited by the ghost of his father, who tells Hamlet who murdered him and asks Hamlet to avenge his death, to seek revenge. And Hamlet agrees to do so. He's in deep sorrow and love for his father, but to do so, he has to take another human life. And while in Shakespeare's plays, and just like any action movie, like if Shakespeare were alive today, he'd be writing Avengers movies. He was a crowd pleaser. What do people want? Violence, sex, gore, right? Scandal. His plays are full of it. Shakespeare is not austere and classy at all. But Hamlet is, and he knows that if he commits a murder, regardless of whether or not it was justified by doing right by his dad, he's going to go to hell for the rest of his life for being a murderer. This is a mortal sin. And what I love about this is that he's balancing his heart upside down, his love for his father, his incredible sorrow that his father's described as such a great man, has been murdered. But he's balancing it with his constant meditations on what that means for his own afterlife and his moral character and his morality. What does it mean? And there's this very famous scene where Hamlet holds a skull and muses on the fact that one day we will all die. And, so what's the purpose of it? And this is why he is at a standstill. but it's for moral reasons. Like, he's really thinking it through, and it really brings through to me just how important this phase is. Right? Somebody like Macbeth or Romeo and Juliet, like if they had stopped and been in the hangman position for 1 second, they would have lived. Everything would have been better if they had moved through this stage. They didn't. I have a lot of sympathy for Hamlet. I like Hamlet a lot. So that's a great card for him. All right. The cat's back. Can't get rid of her. Okay. The death card, King Lear. Again, perfect. If I had to talk personally, if we're not talking about plays that I teach, this is my favorite Shakespeare play. It's my dad's favorite play. It's the first Shakespeare play I ever saw. And Lear is a man who is a fool, afraid of his own mortality at the beginning of the play, and a man who understands his mortality at the end of the play. And it is all of the mistakes and all of the tragedies that befall him have to do with his own ego and his own his inability to prioritize what actually matters while you are on this planet. And at the end, he makes his peace with that at a terrible cost, but he makes his peace, and he's perfect. He's perfect. Also perfect is Prospero as Temperance. Now, Prospero is from The Tempest, which is the same play that Caliban is from. And he's a great wizard who makes things, who can make things happen. He raises a tempest when he wants to shipwreck a specific boat. He's the one really responsible for, a lot responsible for what happens to Caliban. And he is basically regarded as the best magician in the land. And when I first bought this deck, I was certain that Prospero was going to be the magician. But this is what I love about this deck, because Prospero has to learn to balance his abilities and his powers. And actually, at the end of the play, he says he's an old man, and he's going to renounce using his powers against others, that he has finished his works, his magical works on Earth, and he is going to live the rest of his life just as an old man. It's unclear whether or not he's actually going to hold true to that, but he has not always used his powers for good, or at the very least to uphold the highest level. And I think it's beautiful that Prospero, you can see him actually, he's raising the tempest in this card. You can see the boat sort of being tossed on the waves there. It's such a great one. That's lying on the cards. All right, so the devil is Puck, Robin Goodfellow from A Midsummer Night's Dream. So this to me is super fascinating because it lightens the devil considerably into a mischievous character. And I think that's a worthwhile look at the devil, that it's not always something really terrible. It's not always an addiction. It's not always, it's those parts of yourself that you know better, but just sometimes you struggle to make the right decision. But there's a real sense here. You can see everybody sleeping, and he is playing tricks. An annoying man gets turned into a donkey, and then another character falls in love with him. They're all under the magical ministrations of this little character, Puck. But the play ends with Puck, and he basically asks for forgiveness, and then asks of the people on stage and the audience, "Give me your hands if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends." That he's going to put things back right the way they are, and that people are actually better off exploring a bit of their devilish side through the dream. And I think it's a really neat thing. Like, there is going to be a devil, quote unquote, in everybody's life. And it doesn't always have to be negative. Sometimes you have to just loosen up, let yourself experiment, try things. Maybe there's going to be a mistake in there. But to weigh it out, is it that serious? Do you just need to give yourself a break now and again? I just thought it was a really fun example for the devil card. I just wanted to say that the three witches in Macbeth are so fun to read. They play with people. One of the central questions of Macbeth is how much control do they exert? Is it their magical powers that are making him do all these terrible things? Or do they just whisper bad suggestions in his ear and then he follows them almost as an excuse? Or he's been just on the verge of being a terrible man for so long and they just push him in that way. Their double toil and trouble spell is very famous in Act 3 of the play, I think it is. Yeah, Act 3. But also they are like vengeful and mischievous, and they're just so fun. I don't know how I feel about them actually being assigned as the moon, but I think I just read that play again, so it's really on my mind how well written they are and how much fun it is. They're in the play because King James, this was the first play that Macbeth wrote for King James, and he was so convinced of the existence of actual witches that he wrote a whole book about it. He was certain that witches had thrown up a storm at sea when he was bringing his wife, Anne of Norway, back to the UK with him. And actually women, this is super dark actually, like women were tried and executed for that crime of interfering with his marriage, which they clearly did not do. They're fun to read, the witches in the play. And finally, the world is the Globe Theatre. Shakespeare many times compares life and the complexities of life to being in a play. My cat. To being on stage. All the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. Macbeth says that life is like a man is like a player on a stage who struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and that life is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. But this idea that you can create a world on stage to escape to for 2 hours, and I just think it's beautiful, and that the character himself is on stage holding an image of the Globe Theatre. It's fantastic. So I just have a couple more cards to talk about, just some examples of some of the majors. So the Lord of Coins here is the King of Coins. This is Falstaff, he appears in the Henry plays, Henry IV Part 1, Henry IV Part 2, and does he appear? I think no, he doesn't appear in Henry V. I don't think so. Have to look it up and see. But he's such a comic character. He's a beloved Shakespeare character, really a secondary player, but kind of a scene stealer. And he loves joking and food and drink and sex and all these things of the material world. Like, he is a man who understands his physical self and his physical desires. And he's a great, great character for that King of Pentacles card. The Queen of Swords is Beatrice from Much Ado About Nothing. This Much Ado About Nothing to me is kind of it's the version I prefer over Taming of the Shrew, because there is a real meeting of the minds between two people who, again, so throw insults at each other. They don't think they would ever want to be together and fall in love over the course of the play. But it's very clear that they begin the play as equals and they end the play as equals. The difference is Beatrice and Benedict. There's a fantastic film version of Much Ado About Nothing starring Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson, who were married at the time. It's got this great, surprising cast. Keanu Reeves is in it. Billy Crystal's not in it, I don't think. Denzel Washington's in it. Robert Sean Leonard's in it. It's so good. Kate Beckinsale, she's really young in that one. Oh God. And it's laugh out loud funny. Like, I remember going to the theater to see it and then like going home and checking just to see if all those lines were actually in there. I don't know how old I was, but I was pretty young. But I was like, there's no way that's in the play. And it was. It's really good. But she's just like the perfect Queen of Swords, like doesn't let anybody get away with any crap, but still great sense of humor, incredibly witty, incredibly smart. I think it's perfect. And then I just have a couple other, I already showed you this example of a minor. So the Nine of Swords, kind of a nightmarish card with a quotation on it. Where care lodges, sleep will never lie, from Romeo and Juliet. The Eight of Scepters from Henry V, that really forward-moving, commanding leadership presence. All things be ready if our minds be so. Which again, I think is great advice. Like, Eight of Wands is like this super, super forward-moving, let's go and get it done. But let's make sure our minds are ready too before we fly off in those directions. The Eight of Coins, which is often like the person mastering their craft. And it's from Othello, how poor are they that have not patience, which has a deep irony if you've read Othello, that particular line. But if you take it at its face value, right, the patience it would take to complete your craft in that way. And finally, Antony and Cleopatra, this great love story. It's the Seven of Cups, right? All the possibilities. And the great line, come, let's have one other gaudy night. It's so good. So I'm a little over my 30-minute limit, but let me just tell you how I use this deck, or how I have in the past. Although I think I'm going to just try and use it as a regular tarot deck. But I find these, I sort of separate it into the majors and the courts, where there's a character, an archetype to work off of, and then these quotations. And so that I know where I'm drawing from each, because these to me really kind of function like great oracle cards with their quotations. But you can also pull in your knowledge of the Rider-Waite-Smith system, which is so cool. So if I were looking to do a reading about a particular sort of person or energy, I might deliberately choose a one of the characters, a major or the court as a signifier, and then use the minor arcana around it. I might use just the minor arcana or just the majors or combine decks. So I haven't used it a ton as a deck as a whole, but I'm thinking maybe now, thanks to this video, maybe I'm going to start because it's awesome. So again, I'm sorry, it is out of print. Let me show you the box one more time. I got the cat sprawled out right here. So it is a big box. So I would think actually it's not that hard to find. It didn't take me very long, even though it's been out of print for a while. I think the hardest thing about it is it's going to cost a fortune to ship because it's like a brick. But if you're into Shakespeare and you're a total nerd, it's great. And I don't have any other Shakespeare decks. I've looked at a couple and I've been like, no, I'm not feeling it. This has been the one that's really worked for me. So I hope if you're still here after all that Shakespeare, thank you. I hope you have a great day and we'll talk to you soon.